I played the Trails games out of order. I'm going to tell you why that was bad and why it was good. Hey friends, it's Just the Gems. I'm Brandon, and we are in a truly blessed time as Trails series fans. If you're not currently a Trails series fan, then you are also blessed because you will very soon have access to what is probably the most optimal on-ramp to the series since it began 20 years ago, with the upcoming Trails in the Sky First Chapter remake. But there is and has always been a lot of discourse around playing the Trails games out of order, or skipping certain entries or arcs, and it occurred to me that I have a somewhat unique perspective on it. Because when I started playing Trails, I had no choice but to play them out of order. And yet, I can understand the argument coming from the other side as well. So I wanted to talk about that, about the ways playing out of order can hurt your enjoyment of the series overall, as well as the ways it can actually heighten it. Let's go. I played Trails in the Sky FC for the PlayStation Portable way back in the early 2010s. It wasn't right at launch back in 2011, but not too long after that. So, according to purists, I got that part right. I started at the beginning. I got completely absorbed into the story and I fell in love with all the characters, and when the game ended on that ridiculous cliffhanger, I was excited and furious and just basically could not wait to play the sequel. But wait is exactly what I had to do. The second chapter didn't come out until the end of 2015, and if you know the nature of that cliffhanger at the end of the first chapter, you'll understand why that wait was excruciating. But when it finally came, I was there and ready for it. And let me tell you, those of you who will soon be awaiting the remake of second chapter, if it's anything like the glow up of SC compared to FC, then you are in for a real treat when that game comes out. SC blew FC out of the water, and even matching it is already a ridiculously high bar. It's bigger with more story, more battles, more music and characters, and just everything that makes Trails amazing. And then it was done, and I felt pretty complete, emotionally speaking. What a perfect end to a perfect duology that was. And maybe the coolest thing of all was the next game in the series was already out. Yeah, that's right. Xseed brought Trails of Cold Steel to America that same year, so I was able to dive into more Trails almost right away. Now look, some of you hardcore fans are probably seething just hearing that. But the truth of the matter is, I didn't know what I had missed. See, to me, I played the first two Trails games, and then I moved on and played the third, Trails of Cold Steel. I did not know that there were actually 3 entire games in between that I had missed out on. Those being Trails in the Sky the Third, Trails from Zero, and Trails into Azure. You might recognize some of those titles as some of the most beloved games in the series so far. But to me, they didn't exist. Playing through Cold Steel and eventually Cold Steel 2, I really appreciated the references to characters and events from the Sky games. Heck, we even got to see quite a bit of Olivier, and he was naturally one of my favorite characters from the first 2 games. It gave me a real sense of the interconnectedness of this world and the story. The return of Blue Blanc was also really cool, one of my favorite villains from Sky, and getting to see him and Olivier in full 3D with voices was awesome. It absolutely cemented my love for this series. Again, keep in mind, I was missing 3 entire games. I did not know they existed. Now, you might be saying, Brandon, why didn't you just go online and read about it? You would have seen right away that you were missing out on 3 crucial pieces of the Trails story. Which, sure, I could have gone online and seen that, and eventually I did. But despite being a friggin' YouTuber, I'm not really that online. And especially back then, I was content to enjoy things offline without diving into the online fandom. Nothing against any fandoms, but I find they tend to be pretty infighty, and I'm pretty conflict averse. Or maybe conflict averse isn't the right term. If someone picks a fight with me, I'll fight, but I hate every moment of it, so maybe it's conflict disgusted or something. Anyway, not important. What was I saying? Oh, right. I wasn't in the online fandom, so yeah, I missed a lot of stuff. And believe me, when I heard all about what was happening in Crossbell through the Cold Steel games, I was intrigued. I wonder if we'll ever get to go over there and see what's happening, I thought, naive as a precious little baby child. There was so much interesting lore that seemed to center around the place, which I'll admit, at the time felt like maybe a small oversight on the part of the writers. Why make this place so important to the story if you're not even going to show us what's going on there? At the same time, it did feel kind of cool, actually. It made the world feel even bigger, just the fact that these vitally important events were occurring in a place I couldn't even get to. I like that feeling in fiction. But anyway, Cold Steel 1 and 2 were huge for me, and I was so ready for the series to continue. But it wouldn't, at least not over here in the West, for another 3 years. In that intervening 3 years, I finally dug in and did some research on this series I love so much. You can imagine my surprise when I learned not only was there a game in the Sky arc I had completely missed, but there was an entire arc I had skipped. Though learning about the Crossbell games did sort of answer a question I had about all that off-screen stuff happening during Cold Steel. Still, that was a pretty big revelation, as I'm sure you can imagine. And as I read a bit about the next Cold Steel game, I suddenly became aware of how integral the other titles I had missed seemed to be. Whole characters from those games were going to be regularly showing up in the new game, and I hadn't even been introduced to them. Not to mention, the epilogue of Cold Steel 2 gave me an undeniably appealing peek into the city of Crossbell that made me positively ravenous to try it. Seriously, if you're a big Trail series fan, can you imagine how awesome and confusing it was to be someone like me and suddenly find yourself controlling you-know-who and you-know-who in that Cold Steel 2 epilogue? It was nuts. In 2017, Xseed released Trails in the Sky the Third on PC, so that was finally technically accessible to me, though I was getting some mixed signals from the internet at that point. Some people were saying, nah, you can skip Sky the Third, it's just a filler game, it's a dungeon crawler, you're not missing anything. Yes, these are real things that people were saying about one of the Trails games back in the mid-2010s. Being as inundated as I am now in the Trails community, that sounds nuts, but it was true. So I was on the fence. Should I play it at all? The way people were describing it, it did not sound appealing in the same way the other games were. So I put it aside and kept waiting for Cold Steel 3, all the while uneasy about what I might be missing because I hadn't played Crossbell. But since Crossbell wasn't available in English, there wasn't much I could do. I knew an unofficial fan translation was in the works, but that had been underway for a long time and there were no signs of it coming very soon. There was also, let's say, a really rough, raw, bare-bones English translation available online. This was good enough to get you through the games, but the trademark brilliant writing that the series is known for did not come across in it at all. Still, it was coming down to the wire, and I did not relish the idea of not having that Crossbell context, so I decided to play them with the rough translation, warts and all. I also decided to go ahead and give Trails in the Sky the Third a try, and if you're a fan, I'm sure you understand how glad I am that I did that. Sky the Third is a masterpiece of world building, and it thoroughly lays the groundwork for the games to come. The rough translation of Zero and Azure, on the other hand, they were very bad. Very bad. Look, the story and the characters are by far the most important things to me in a JRPG. Good combat is nice. Pretty graphics are cool. But the story, the presentation, the characters, those are the key ingredients for me. These rough translations were not good, guys. I could barely understand what was going on. And the quirks that make all the characters in those games lovable just got absolutely slaughtered in translation. But I scraped by, and technically, I was introduced to the Crossbell team. They sounded like if Google Translate threw up on an anime, but whatever. I had gotten what I came there for: context. So I jumped into Cold Steel 3 and I knew who everyone was, and I was at least somewhat better able to appreciate the events I had experienced in Cold Steel 1 and 2. Still, if I had waited to play Zero and Azure just a few more years, I would have been treated to a much, much better experience. I think it would have significantly altered how I feel about those two games in general. By playing the rough and nasty translation first, I kind of ruined those games for myself a bit. It's hard for me to give them as high a place in my heart as they might deserve because they're sort of tainted by how I first experienced them. My experience of the Trail series is different than a lot of people's, I'm sure. I wouldn't even call my experience ideal in any way. But I do truly think, as I've been implying, if not outright saying, there are legit benefits to playing out of order. As a Trail series fan, I will say that I think the optimal way of experiencing the story is in order. The Sky arc, the Crossbell arc, the Cold Steel arc, the Calvert arc. I think you do get the most bang for your buck traveling along the path Falcom laid out for us. However, I don't think there's nothing to be gained from playing Out of Order. It's what I did, and it allowed me to become a crazy super fan. If playing Out of Order, skipping certain games, if that is going to ruin the experience, then I shouldn't even be here saying all this right now. Here's the benefits of playing Out of Order. For one, you get to see the story from a completely different angle. It's true. The revelations made about what was happening in Crossbell during the Cold Steel games was an entire layer of intrigue that I wouldn't have gotten if I'd played Crossbell first. And on top of that, because I had the Cold Steel context for those events, it made me even more excited to go back and actually experience those events in Crossbell for myself. That sense of intrigue made me more likely to want to play the rest of the games, not less likely. For another thing, starting or jumping ahead can give you a more refined gameplay experience. To be perfectly frank, a lot of people will be turned off by the combat in some of the older Trails games. It's true. And if you introduce that old school combat first thing, you might lose them as fans. Give them a great gameplay experience that goes along with a story full of intrigue, and you're going to find that people are willing to go back and play the ones they missed. I know I really enjoyed the glow up from Sky SC to Cold Steel. The gradual change from Sky to Crossbell wouldn't have been as noticeable to me, but the significant shift from Sky straight to Cold Steel felt incredible. And finally, playing Out of Order is just extremely freeing. There are a lot of voices online screaming at you that you are doing it wrong. Not just about Trails, but about everything, really. To fully remove yourself from that cacophony of angry people is a gosh darn relief, and I want more people to be able to experience it. Play whichever game you want first, and then play whichever game you want next. I can say that because I think if you play, say, Trails Through Daybreak, and if you connect with it in a meaningful way, you're going to want to play the rest of the games, maybe even in order. And if you play Trails in the Sky First Chapter Remake as your first Trails game this fall, and you decide you don't want to wait and you're going to pick up Daybreak to enjoy more of the story and gameplay, hey, go nuts. I hope you enjoy it. I think you will. I keep mentioning the discourse around this, and I think it's safe to say that in a lot of ways it's gotten out of hand. There are people out there trying to cancel a creator because he dared to suggest not everyone has to play every Trails game in the precise release order. As someone who did that very thing, and not by choice, I can tell you, it's true. It's entirely possible and even likely that someone who plays Out of Order or who skips a game or two can get sucked into the series and become a true super fan. By telling someone, you don't have to play all the games, what you're doing is removing a huge amount of pressure from that person. Someone who has been interested in Trails but intimidated by the time investment is going to most likely feel a palpable sense of relief from hearing that. Oh, they'll think, I can just grab like Daybreak? Cool. And they'll do that. And then the series gets its hooks in and they want to play them all. I've seen it happen enough times that I'm confident in this strategy. Telling someone they can skip certain games isn't doing a disservice to the series at all. If anything, it's laying a honey trap to get them in, knowing full well they're going to get obsessed. If playing Out of Order gets someone into the fold, I say great. Whatever makes it happen, I'm in support of it. Taking a hardline stance on something like this does an enormous disservice to the series. You end up turning away people who might otherwise have gone on to become giant fans. That's not the sort of fandom I think anyone truly wants to belong to, is it? Maybe the reasons that playing Out of Order is bad might be obvious to certain people. Some people might not be enticed by the sense that they're missing something. Some people might even feel cheated by that. If I play Trails from Zero first and this is how I meet Estelle and Joshua, I might think, these are the characters everyone on the internet won't shut up about? I don't get it. To be clear, I don't think I would have thought that, but I can imagine a situation in which someone might. If you are a very A to B to C type of person, if you prefer stories to move sequentially and in no other direction, this will probably be a tough pill for you to swallow, and you may want to avoid Out of Order play. There's also the gameplay downgrade phenomenon. I personally have a hard time imagining playing a game like Trails Through Daybreak and then going back to, say, Trails from Zero and using that combat system. Now, Zero has a great combat system, but to me, and I imagine to a lot of others, it would feel like a downgrade. And that's because Falcom has always done a fantastic job at iterating on their design from game to game. There are 6 games of refinement between Zero and Daybreak, and I think Some people are going to feel that 6-game difference more significantly than others will. And in certain respects, I guess there's also a chance of outright spoiling some significant plot twists. There are cool developments that happen in certain games that might be brought up nonchalantly by characters in later games. In truth, this doesn't happen as much as you might think it does, but it does happen. And if you consider that sort of thing a spoiler because you're already planning to go back and play the previous games, then maybe you want to take your newfound enthusiasm for Trails and go ahead and start at the beginning. Because this is one cohesive world, and events that happen in it have long-lasting impacts on everyone. Trails is my favorite series, and I really want as many people as possible to at least give it a try. If the stipulation for someone giving it a try is showing them a bit of grace and letting them experience the story in the way that is least intimidating or restrictive for them, then I want to let that happen. I would just ask that other fans out there try and do the same. You can definitely feel passionately about recommending someone start from the beginning. That's fine. And like I say, fundamentally, I agree with that. But if someone is not going to do that, then I think it's time to move on to plan B. Recommend a compelling arc for them to try. My go-to is Daybreak right now, and pretty soon, naturally, it'll be Trails in the Sky First Chapter Remake. But if they want to then jump around a bit, I won't stop them. I may give them general warnings that I mentioned in this video, but at the end of the day, I want them to play Trails, not to be scared off from ever touching Trails. How do you feel about it? I hope you're at least open to considering my point of view, and I'll consider yours as well if you disagree down in the comments. I really appreciate you watching, and if you got any enjoyment out of this, would you consider liking and subscribing? And also, I have channel memberships, so if you're able to support me in the channel that way, I'd be extremely grateful. Oh, and be sure to check out my podcast, the JRPG Pursuit. We put out new episodes every Wednesday. Link is in the description. So with that, until next time.